Hey everybody, welcome to Harmon Garage. I'm Aaron. It's another day back here in the shop, and I think I've got something that y'all are gonna like. So by the views on the videos, it seems to me that my old dually Pennywise is one of y'all's favorites because it seems to get the most views, and I gotta do a little bit of work to it. I'm still planning that long 24-hour round trip drive, maybe 26-hour round trip drive in it, and I'm hoping to go maybe next weekend. So there's a couple more things that I want to touch up on it before I leave, and so I'm gonna pull it in, do some of that stuff, and I'm gonna take you guys along for the ride. But why I got you here, this is after sitting overnight. You can't really tell that well. Let me grab a flashlight. While I'm walking over here to get a flashlight, if you're watching the video, leave me a comment. Hit the like button. Maybe even subscribe if you're not. All that stuff really helps the channel grow, and that's what I'm looking to do. So if you could help me out, really appreciate it. But here we go. You can see all the stuff, all the oil deposits and everything that have been pulled out sitting on top, and how dark the green's got, the simple green has gotten. So it's really doing its job. It's really doing a good job. So I don't know if I can tweak. I don't even want to touch it while I got my cameras in my hands because it's so dirty, but I'm gonna grab a stick of some kind of stir that around a little bit, let it move, so maybe we can get some fresh, hey, look at that, got a perfect cold tank stir stick right here. So just stir this around a little bit, make it move so it's not just the same spot sitting there. Kind of maybe get some motion in it, it'll flow through the block a little bit better. But I can definitely smell it. It's as soon as I walk in the shop, you can smell the simple green. So I will, before I go home today, I'm gonna lift it up and check it. If everything's looking pretty clean, I'll go ahead and flip it. If it's still looking really nasty, I'll leave it over the weekend and we'll flip it on Monday. But I don't want to leave it in there any longer than I have to. So if it's coming clean pretty quickly, I can flip it over. I'll let it sit overnight, and even though I don't usually come over here on the weekends, I'll come over tomorrow and see if the other side's cleaned up. If it is, I'll get it all out, get it rinsed off, and get it sprayed down with some WD-40 or something along those lines so that it won't rust. And then it'll be ready to go back together. I've gotten some of the parts for it already. I went to Sibley's this morning. He had most of the stuff I needed, but there was a little bit that he had to order. So we got a whole box here. We got gaskets, we got oil pumps, we got oil pump screens, we got rod bearings, we got yada 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 and yada. He ordered the main bearings and a couple other things. I got timing chain in there too, so those things should be here, and we can finish that thing, cleaning that thing up, and get back to putting it back to honing it out and all that stuff and putting it back together. But I got a couple things I got to wrap up in the shop here real quick, and then I'm going to move Oxen out, pull Pennywise in, and we'll get to work. Well, I guess the big girl fits in here too. Not a huge amount of room, but plenty of room that I can work in here and not be in the rain. So I drove it a little while this morning, and then I drove it over here, and a lot of the stuff I got to do is around the engine and the exhaust. So I'm gonna let it cool down, and I thought I had all the parts that I needed, but I forgot a couple things. So I'm gonna make a list so I don't forget anything, and then I'm gonna run to the parts store and grab a few things, and then we'll come back and get on it. So we got Pennywise. We're gonna fix exhaust leak, plugs and wires, oil pressure gauge. It hasn't had one in the year and a half I've been driving it with this, since I put this motor in. The one in the dash was, wow, that's a gnarly sucker right there. I didn't even see him. I think he's dead. Yep, he's dead. But I've known it has oil pressure because it shoots it out of everywhere it can shoot it out of, but I got most of the leaks sealed up now, and I just want to be able to monitor it. So we're gonna put an oil pressure gauge in it. I need to hook up the choke, replace starter, replace oil pan, gasket, sway bar, bushings, driver door pins, and man, this list is getting long quick. I want to clean it out. It's got a couple years worth of stuff in it. Reseal, dipstick tube, I think that's it, but yeah, so if I think of something else, we'll handle it. Otherwise, that's the list. So like I said, I'm gonna run over to O'Reilly's and get some parts, and I'll get back here and we'll get on this list. All right, well, went to the parts store last night and picked up the spark plugs and the sway bar end link bushings and some wiper blades and other stuff I needed. And as I was driving back, my wife called me up and she needed the car to go do something for my 2-year-old. So I closed up shop, went home, didn't get anything done at all. So I'm here on Saturday, which isn't very normal for me, but we're doing it this week. I gotta get this truck done because I've made up my mind, I've scheduled my plans, and I'm leaving for my trip in 6 days. So next Friday, this coming Friday, I'll be headed out to go pick up that truck that I told you about, that this motor that I'm about to show you again is for. So I let it soak, the one side of it soak in the simple green for, I put it in there late Thursday afternoon, and it soaked all day Friday, and it's about 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon now. And I just pulled it out, flipped it over, took a gallon of fresh water and rinsed off everything that, just rinsed it off, make sure there wasn't any simple green left sitting on anything anywhere. And then I took just blue shop towels and wiped out the 4 cylinders, and then I sprayed the cylinders with some penetrating oil. So I'm going to show you what it looks like. I'm real happy with it, actually. It came pretty dang clean for just soaking in some simple green. And once this soaks, I'll let this soak all day today, all day tomorrow, And then when I come back to the shop Monday, I'll pull it out and I'll take it outside to the garden hose with a nozzle on it, and I'll just rinse it through the water jackets and, you know, just make sure all the simple green and all the loose dirt and everything's off. But I'm going to show you what it looks like right now with just, you know, very minimal action by me. I really just put it in the simple green, let it sit for 2 days, and then pulled it out, flipped it, and poured literally out of a gallon jug, poured water on it. So the cylinders I took a little more care with. I want to make sure I don't get any rust in them even though I'm honing them. But it looks pretty good. So, I mean, there's spots on it. I mean, you can see that's still dirty, but it's not, it's just kind of like stained, like it wipes right off. That's all bare steel, that's the block. I mean, it took off all the loose chipped paint. Took off all the oil, grease, and grime. I mean, literally, like if I took a can of brake parts cleaner and sprayed this thing, it would be dang near perfect. Like it's good and clean. Cylinders are all good and clean. It didn't eat the gaskets, but it loosened them all up to where I just tapped them with my finger and they fell off. So totally worth it. I mean, it's not taking it to a machine shop and having it hot tanked, but in my opinion, it's honestly the next best thing because it got that thing real clean. Now, I could have sat there and done what I've done on the other blocks on the channel and scrubbed it all down with a wire brush and scraped it with a scraper and cleaned it and all that and got it clean enough to paint. But with this one, since I had it tore down anyways, and there's a lot of rust in the water jackets, and I wanted to clean the water jackets out, like flush the inside of the block out, the oil valleys and the water jackets and everything else. I wanted it to get through everything. So that's why I pulled these freeze plugs, and it was rusty as heck in there. And if you look in there now, it's clean, bare metal. So I got all that cleaned out. I'm sure it did the same thing to the oil passages. Once I blast it all off with water really good, when I pull it out of there, I'll go back with air and I'll blow air in all the water jackets. I'll blow air through all the oil passages, maybe squirt some brake parts cleaner in there and then blow air through, just to make sure I get out as much as I can. The water jackets I'm not really too concerned with because they're going to have coolant in them. And the oil galleys I want to be a little bit more precise with because I don't want any simple green breaking down my oil in there. So I'll clean it out really good, but I mean, you got to do that if you hot tank it too. So I think it's working good. I give it a A1 stamp of approval. Yes, it took 4 days, but I don't have all the parts to put it back together yet anyways, so I'm not in that big of a hurry. But I did go to the parts store last night. I did get the parts that I needed to do everything I want to do to the truck before I leave. So I got it here. I'm going to get started on it right now. I'm going to go ahead and change out these spark plugs. And then once I get the spark plugs done, I'll decide what I'm going to do next. But we're going to change out some spark plugs and check out the ones that are in there and keep going. All right. I don't put a lot of miles on this truck, but I usually like to try to do a tune-up once a year or so, and it's been over a year. And yesterday I pulled a spark plug to see what size I had in here because I wanted to run something a little bit hotter. And it's got Bosch spark plugs in it, and Chevy motors do not like Bosch spark plugs. I don't know why. I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know I've been warned by a lot of people, don't ever put Bosch spark plugs in a Chevy. So I pulled this out, and as you can see, the whole electrode tip is gone, and it burned off half of the tab there. So I've had a little bit of a miss. I kind of chalked it up to the spark plug wires that are on here are a build your own set where you got to put the ends on one end, and my nephew built them, and this was the first set that he ever did. So Not saying he did a bad job or anything like that, but I just figured I had a wire that wasn't getting a good fire or something like that, and that's where my little stumble was coming from, because the truck's too good. It's not like it's got a dead cylinder or anything. So, and it wasn't like a dead miss, it was just a slight miss. Like, I just noticed it wasn't idling as smooth as it should. So I got a new set of wires. I got a set of AC Delco R44 TS plugs, which is what should be in here. 43s are kind of cold, 44s are okay, 45s are hot. Little on the hotter side. I just went with 44s because it had these burnt up Bosches in it. And it's actually kind of carboned up, which might be because it wasn't firing great. So I was thinking about putting a little more timing in it, but I think what I'm going to do is just leave the timing where it's at, because it fires up good, runs good, doesn't get hot, all that stuff. So I think I'm just going to leave it where it's at, and I'll drive the 700 and whatever miles it is, up to 740 miles up to get that truck. And while I'm up there, I'll pull a plug and look at it, and if it needs a little more timing, I'll give it a little bit more. But I don't want it running fat, rich, but I don't want to put too much timing in it if I don't need to either, because the way it sits right now with the burn up spark plugs, it's got plenty of power for everything I do with it. So I'm going to grab the new plugs. I'm going to mark that cap so I know that's where number 1 is, because that's where I always put it, but just as a fail-safe, I'm just going to go ahead and put a little mark on it so I know that's number 1. I'll pull all the wires off, I'll pull all the plugs off, and put the new ones in, put the new wires on, and we'll keep on going. Okay, so I got all my spark plugs gapped, got them all replaced. I had a set of wires laying around right here that I was going to use, but they've got 90-degree boots on both ends, and with the big block, with these particular exhaust manifolds, you have to have the straight boots. So I had to make the 30-minute trip over to Sibley's. He hooked me up with a set of wires. We're going to go ahead and get them on and keep moving along. Okay, I got all the spark plug wires on. They should be in the right firing order. I still need to tie them all up, but I'm not going to do that just yet, because after looking at all the plugs, I've decided it does for sure need a little bit more timing, and So I'm going to be moving the distributor, but I'm going to fire it up. I know you're supposed to check the timing when it's warm, but I'm going to fire it up, let it run for a minute, just see where the timing's at, and then because the next thing I'm going to do is crawl underneath there and drain the oil, because I'm going to do an oil change on it again, even though I just did one not that long ago, because I'm changing the oil pan gasket. So I'm going to fire it up, let it run for a couple minutes after I open the door and stuff, and I'm not going to let it warm up, but I want to make sure it's been sitting all night, so I want to make sure the oil's kind of warm and circulates a little bit, and then I'll drain it. Okay. I put a new harmonic balancer on this thing a while back because the other one, the bolts in the balancer pulley came loose, and it ate the threads up when it came loose. So I just went ahead and replaced the balancer. So I don't know if the timing tab on the timing cover is correct with this balancer, because it's just I went and bought a big block balancer. So I don't know if the tab is right. If the tab is right, hold on a second, I got a power steering leak and I just put fluid in it, and now I'm watching it. Oh, it's coming out the cap. Okay, maybe I need a new cap that seals better. But anyways, I was saying, I don't know if the balancer is right or the timing tab on the timing cover is right for this balancer, because right now it's showing that like 14 on the tab is right here at, let's say, like 2 o'clock on the balancer, and the timing mark on the balancer is up at like 12. So that's got to be like 40 some degrees of timing, and there's no way it's got that much timing in it. For one thing, it is running a lot better now that I changed the plugs and wires, so that could have been a little bit, but the plugs still looked rich, and there's no way I got a 600 CFM carburetor on a big block with 40 some degrees of timing in it and it's running rich. It's not even, there's no way. So I don't think that's right. I might give it, once I get all the work I'm doing to it done, I'll let it warm up, and then I'll just give it a little bit more timing, shut it off, see if it's hard to start or if it starts fine or whatever. Or I might just leave it where it is. It's running good. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it where it is. It's running good. I'm going to drive it up to Chicago. I'm going to pull a spark plug and see what it looks like, and then go from there. because I don't want to, you know what they say, without using the bad word, don't mess with a good thing. So it's running good. I'm not going to mess with it. So I'm going to crawl underneath here, drain the oil out of this thing, and pull the oil pan off. Alright, well, got the oil pan out. While I was down there, I went ahead and pulled the starter and the oil pressure sending unit that was in there. It wasn't the right one. It was for an electric gauge. This truck never had an electric gauge. But so I pulled it out, pulled the oil filter off, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So the last time I changed the oil pan gasket on this before, and I put a one-piece Velcro gasket in it, but I don't remember the exact circumstances. It was right before I was getting ready to move, or I was going somewhere in it or something, and I was trying to fix the leak because I knew it was leaking. So it was like 140 degrees in my shop in the middle of summer in Texas, and I don't remember exactly, but I didn't do a good job putting it in is what I'm trying to say. When I got the pan off this time, I looked up there, and there was still pieces of the old gasket on the bottom of the block where the pan bolts on. So I went ahead and cleaned that really good this time, scraped it all off. I took a hammer and dolly and trued the pan up the little bit that it was off, cleaned it really good, and yeah, so I got it all cleaned up. There's the old gasket. I got the new gasket sitting over there on the pan, and while I was under there too, I noticed that there's a little bit of oil seeping out of where the fuel pump mounts to the block, and I've replaced that fuel pump once, and I put that gasket in there, and I know it got cleaned and all that stuff, so I'm thinking maybe just maybe the bolts are a little loose. I've been going over this truck today, and everything is kind of loose. I don't know why. Like when I went to pull the dipstick tube out of the oil pan so I could drop the oil pan, the little bolt on the tab where it bolts to the exhaust manifold was loose. I had to take one of the heat shields on the rear spark plug on the passenger side. It was giving me fits, so I went to kind of bend it out of the way a little bit, and the bolt that held it on was finger tight. I reached down there and backed it out, so I need to go through and just kind of do a nut and bolt check on this thing. I guess it's rattling itself apart, but I'll tighten up all the exhaust manifolds. I'll try to tighten up that fuel pump a little bit if it needs it, and I'll check out some other stuff. But it's about 5 o'clock on Saturday night. I don't even really want to be here, but if I don't get it done today, it's not going to get done, and I really want to get it done before I leave for my trip. So I'm going to keep hanging it out. I'd love to be able to film all this for you guys because it's probably humorous, but I don't really have a setup to where I can film under the truck. So I'm going to get back under there and get the oil pan back on, get the new, I got a mini torque starter to replace the starter that was in here, and that starter was on this motor when I got the other truck that this motor was in that had been sitting for 30 or 40 years. So that starter was 35, 40 years old at best, and so anyways, I got a mini torque starter to replace it. I'm going to get it thrown in there. I'm going to get the pan thrown in there. I'm going to get the line from my oil pressure gauge hooked up because it's down next to the oil filter. I get a new filter put on, and then when I move back up to the top to do the rest of the stuff I got to do up there, I'll film all that for you guys so you can see what I'm doing. But hang tight. I'm going to get back to it. Alrighty. I got everything done underneath but the starter. I got the oil pan back on, and today was just not my day doing that. But I figured out a little trick that I never did before, and I kind of made it up as I went, but sometimes those one-piece rubber Velcro gaskets come with like 4 little plastic deals with clips on them, and you can screw them into the 4 corners of the block, and you push the gasket over them, and they got little tabs that hold the gasket in place, and you do what you got to do and put the pan in and all that kind of stuff. Well, this set didn't come with those, and even if it had, the way you gotta take it up over the cross member and under the crank and get it back in place, they'd have been too long. They didn't work. So I fought it. I set it on there. I tried to gently put it up there, probably no less than 15 times, and it just wasn't working out for me. And I was just about to give up for the night, and I was like, you know what? I got an idea. So I took some 4 zip ties, and zip tied like the second or third bolt back from the front on both sides, and the second or third bolt hole up from the back on both sides. Zip tied it on there kind of loosely. I didn't want it real tight, but it held it in place. Put it right up there, boom, first time. Got some bolts started. Before I tightened them down, I went up there, cut the zip ties, pulled them out, ran the bolts in, bing, bang, boom, done. Probably tightening bolts and everything, I bet you it was like 15 minutes after I spent an hour and a half fighting it. So if you're ever doing that, it's a good thing to do. So got a new oil filter on. I'll show you here in a few minutes, but I got my line for my mechanical oil pressure gauge hooked up to the pressure port on the side of the oil filter housing. Oil pan's done, oil filter's on, oil pressure line is on. I went to put the starter on, and I forgot when you go to the mini torque starter, you have to have shorter bolts. Well, they sell an install kit for the mini torque starter. I usually buy it. I didn't even think about it, got the starter. So anyways, I can't put the starter on yet, so I can't finish the truck today. So I'm just going to wrap up a couple things. It's like 9 o'clock at night on Saturday. I'm going to go home, and then even though I got a lot of stuff I got to do this coming week before I leave Friday, I'm going to have to take another at least partial day for this thing. So it's okay. I mean, I don't really have a choice. I gotta have it going right, because I don't want any issues on my 1,500 mile trip. So I'm using 1540. It's what I always use, mainly because it helps keep the oil pressure up when you're running hard. You know, when you're towing a trailer with a load on it down the highway at 60 miles an hour and the temp's a little bit above what it's normally at and all that kind of stuff, a little bit thicker oil, it takes a little bit more to break it down. It keeps your oil pressure up a little higher. So that's the main reason I run it. I've heard a lot of other guys that have a lot of other valuable reasons for why they run the 1540 and stuff, which is all true, but the main reason I do it is to keep my oil pressure up when I'm running her hard. So I think this thing holds like 8 quarts with the filter. So I got 2 jugs here, pour them in, and yeah, get some oil in it. I can't start it, so basically just putting oil in it. But I don't remember if I told you this or not already, but I did check the bolts on my fuel pump, and I'm not going to say that they were loose, but I'm not going to say that they were tight either. So they were kind of snug, I guess you'd say. So I went ahead and tightened them down. Hopefully that'll stop my oil seeping out around the fuel pump. And while I was underneath, I noticed that my driver's side valve cover is leaking again, which I don't know what to do anymore. I've put 3 sets of valve covers and 3 sets of valve cover gaskets on this dang truck, and they're still leaking. But these thick gaskets I put on here, that one broke. Like, I seen it kind of sticking out over there, and I went to grab it, and like half the gasket came off. So Monday morning I'm gonna have to run and get the starter install kit and new valve cover gaskets, and I'm gonna have to do valve cover gaskets again. And I'm gonna have to do get the starter put in. And I think because it's already so late and I got to spend another day working on it anyways, I'm gonna push off more stuff on my list to Monday, so I can get home and spend some time with my little girl and my other kids before they go to bed, and basically just take it easy for the rest of the weekend, since I gotta hold off on this anyways. Alright, I've got 6 quarts in it. I'm gonna go ahead and check it because I hate to run it over full. But I think for sure take 7, if not 8. Well, I've got, what did I say, 6 in it now, and it's over the full mark, so I'm going to leave it there, and then after I get the starter in and get the oil pressure gauge hooked up and I can fire it up and fill up that filter, I'll double check it and make sure. I got about 6.5 in it, I guess, but I'll check it after that. So yeah, I'm gonna look over a couple more things. I'll let you guys know where I'm leaving off for the night, and then we'll pick it back up on Monday. All right, well, looking over my list here, I did get quite a bit of stuff done. Well, for the amount of time I worked on it today, I did okay, and we added a couple things to the list. And I fixed a few other things that I saw while I was doing stuff, like, oh, hey, that don't look right. I'm going to go ahead and touch that up. So everything that I do to the truck's just making it better. And it's less stuff that I'm going to have to do. Hang on, I just thought of something else. Just less stuff I'm going to have to do when I pull the truck down and actually go through it and redo the interior and make it look nice and rewire it and put a paint job on it, stuff like that. I'm not doing like a full restoration. I've already explained that all to you, but okay. We're gonna go over the list real quick. Fix exhaust leak. Put a new gasket in the driver's side where the pipe goes to the manifold. Plugs and wires, you saw that. Hook up oil pressure gauge. That's halfway done. Hook up choke, I didn't do. The starter I have out, but you already know about that. Place oil pan gasket. Wish I got paid by the hour on that one. Sway bar bushings I haven't done yet. Door pins I haven't done yet. Clean out haven't done yet. Reseal dipstick tube. When I put it back in, I put a rubber O-ring on it. But what's happening is there's like a little ridge on there. And there's a ridge in the tube where it goes into the oil pan, and the dipstick's not going down far enough for those to sit against each other. So even with the O-ring in there, it's not sitting down there all the way. So I did what I thought was best and just took and smeared silicone all around the tube that the tube goes into. And yeah, so it should be all right. It's gonna have plenty of time for the silicone to cure before it gets any oil or anything on it, because it's gonna be 2 days before I work on it again. I install new fuel fitting for bulk tank. That second tank that you saw me put on in, I think, the last video on this truck, when I hooked the return up to the existing tank, it's 3/8 down to 1/4. And I got a 3/8 line coming out of my pump, and there's only a 1/4 inch return line on the tank. So I just hooked it up and ran a hose clamp down tight on it, but I actually went and made a fitting to go from 3/8 barb to 1/4 barb. So basically doing it right. So we're gonna put that in. We had to add valve cover gaskets, and then it dawned on me when I was crawling around underneath there looking at everything that I haven't greased the front end on this truck since I put it on the road a year and a half, almost 2 years ago. So I better go ahead and slap some grease in there, and you know, just maintenance stuff. But that's gonna do it for right now. I wanted to try to get this video up for you guys tomorrow, which is Sunday, but I don't want to just do half of what I'm doing for the video. So maybe you guys will be watching this Monday night. But I'll be back Monday. We'll get this thing knocked out and life goes on. All right, it's another day. I'm getting a really late start. I had some family stuff I had to do this morning, but I have to get this truck done today. I'm leaving Friday to go on that long trip I keep talking about, and I have to finish the truck. I have to check out the trailer, make sure it's ready. I got something else that I got to do that I'm hauling on the trip with me that I'll film for you guys when I do it. But I'm running out of time. I've got today, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because I'm leaving Friday morning. So I have to get this knocked out today. That'll give me 3 days to make sure everything else is ready, and maybe I can get some work done on one of these projects I need to keep going on this week also. But before we get started on old Pennywise, I'll give you guys an update on this 307 block. I've gotten it pulled out of the simple green. You can see just how much crap it took off and out of it, and it's looking pretty good. I pulled it out, I rinsed it off with water, I flushed out all the water jackets. They're probably cleaner than they've ever been. I wiped the cylinders out real good, sprayed them with WD-40 and wiped them again just to make sure there was WD-40 all in the cylinders so I don't get any surface rust in them before I hone them. And then everywhere that I'm not going to paint, basically inside the timing cover, inside the valley, underneath of it, where all the bearing journals and all that stuff is, I sprayed all that down with WD-40 too, just so I don't get any surface rust inside the motor. Not that it would hurt anything, the oil would absorb it real fast, but why get it in there if you don't have to? But other than that, this thing came out great. I mean, it looks like I sat here with a wire brush and brake parts cleaner and towels and everything I normally have and scrubbed on this thing for 2 days to get it to this point, and I literally just let it sit in a tub. And now I know that all the internal passages of the motor are cleaned out too, and not just the outside to make it look pretty. I blew out all the oil passages. I ran the hose through all the water ports and basically filled them up so it was running out where those freeze plugs that I took out are. It was running out all the ports and passages where the heads bolt on the deck. Flushed it all out with water, blew it all out with air to dry it. I blew air through all the oil passages. I sprayed a little bit of WD-40 down where the oil pressure gauge goes and blew air in there, hopefully dispersing it through the block a little bit. I soaked the cam bearings in WD-40. Should be good. I know I'm not going to be able to get back on this week because I don't have time, and I'm still waiting on some parts that got ordered. So just a little update. The whole simple green and the Rubbermaid container worked fantastic. It took about, I soaked one end for 2 days, flipped it over, soaked the other end for 2 days. If you can get a bigger Rubbermaid container that the whole block can fit in, you probably just have to do it once for about 2 days. But I'm happy with it. Didn't have to haul it anywhere. Didn't pay nobody to do nothing. A little bit of simple green and she's ready to go. But that's enough about that. I got to get back to work. So we've made a bunch of progress on Pennywise. I've already explained all that stuff to you. I still have to do sway bar bushings, wiper blades. I have to hook up the oil pressure gauge in the cab. I got my line hooked up down on the block, but I got to run it in the cab and hook it up in there. Valve cover gaskets are leaking again, so I got some new ones of those today. I still have to put my new, where's it at? Right there, my new starter in. Guess we'll resort back to the list. Grease the front end, install the fuel fitting, driver door pins, clean it out, hook up the choke, yada yada yada. Got a lot of stuff I got to knock out today, but I'm ready to go. We're gonna get it done, so I'm gonna get to work. All right, well, made some progress on this old girl. I didn't film any of it because everything was underneath, and like I said before, it's hard for me to film under the truck. There's no lighting, can't get a camera under there, you know, all that kind of stuff. But I'm gonna go over my list real quick, see what we got done, then I'll move up top and show you guys what I got going on up there. So start from the top. Starter, done. Sway bar end links, done. Install new fitting for the bulk tank, done. Grease front end, done. So we've got oil pressure gauge, choke, driver door pins, and valve cover gaskets left. Making progress, making good time doing it. Stuff's been going together pretty good. Once again, while I was underneath there, seeing some stuff that wasn't really happy with or whatever, went ahead and fixed it up. So yeah, why I'm sitting here thinking I got the stuff to do it today, but I got more to add to the list. So wiper blades, piece of cake, 2 minutes. And we're just gonna put flush coolant. I'll know what that means, even though we're not really flushing it. But the last time when I put the new harmonic balancer on and resealed the front cover, I had to have the water pump and everything off, and I just filled it back up with water. So I don't really know how much coolant's in there. It's got a green tint to it, but I don't want to trust it. So I'm gonna drain the radiator down some, and I bought non-diluted coolant, so I'm just gonna drain it down some, and then I'll fill it back up with a full jug of full strength coolant. And I got a second jug I'll probably take with me. I usually take, you know, some oil, some coolant, some power steering fluid. It doesn't leak coolant, but it leaks oil and power steering fluid, so I always got stuff with me rather than buying it at truck stops or gas stations on the road where it's 10 times more expensive. So I'm gonna drain that down a little bit. I'm gonna set the camera up. We'll start hooking up the choke and putting the fuel pressure or the oil pressure gauge in and all that stuff. Also, let me get away from my ringing phone. After I replaced that fitting for the bulk tank, I poured 6 more gallons of gas in there and ran my pump and tested it. I've got a filter underneath there, clear filter underneath there, so I can watch it, and it's pumping fuel good, and my gas gauge went up. So I know that system's working, it's pumping fuel over. That was the plan. I'd much rather go 300 miles per stop than 150. So yeah, like I said, I'm gonna do what I said I was gonna do. Alrighty. I got about a little over a gallon of coolant drained out of it. Went ahead and filled it back up. Now I'm going to wire in my choke here. So I'm going to take one of my bolts that holds my carburetor down out. This carburetor came with a kit to do this, and I couldn't tell you for the life of me where it went. I looked all over for it. Don't have time to look anymore, so we're just going to run our own wires. Not a big deal. I need a male end for the ground. Putting an eyelet on there. Just ground it right here to the intake. I'll plug that in to the negative on the choke. And then I got a good length of dark green wire here. Not for any specific reason other than I had a bunch of it laying around. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a female end on this, put it on the choke, and then we'll run it in and see if we can find a hot ignition spot in the fuse box that I haven't used yet. And then someday when I finally get to pull this thing down for a little bit and rewire it, it'll all get wired in right. So, put our female end on there, wire that in. Probably got entirely too much wire, but that's normal for me. So I want to route this kind of down along the wires that are already here, and I can zip tie it to them and make it look somewhat clean. Should be good. I'll leave a little bit of slack in it so it's not tight. I've already got a hole with a grommet over here in the firewall that was in the truck when I got it. And there's room for more stuff. So I'm gonna run that right through there. Yeah, I definitely got entirely too much wire. Probably got a whole rat's nest coiling up on the floor in there. But it's okay. I'd rather do that than spend all the time routing it and not be able to reach. So, alright, got that routed. I'm gonna go in there, find somewhere in my fuse box to hook it up, get it hooked up. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is finish hooking up my oil pressure gauge, because I want to fire this thing up, and I can't fire it up right now because it'll spray oil everywhere. So I can fire it up, I can make sure the choke's working, I can fill the oil filter via the motor, and then recheck my oil, make sure it's full, and you know, some other things. Just make sure it starts and the starter's good and it starts and it's going to run. And then once I know that, I can go ahead and do the driver door pins, replace valve cover gaskets, and pretty much call it a day. So I'm going to hook this choke up and we'll do the oil pressure gauge. Okay, I got my copper line from my oil pressure gauge brought in here. I'll route it out of the way of the pedals and over to where I want it. I'm just going to stick it right here for now because that'll do good, and I'm planning on, once again, when I redo the truck, I'm going to put all new gauges up in the bezel. So I'm just going to get this in there just so I can monitor my oil pressure, and yeah. Just gonna hang my little bracket and loose some screws, put my gauge in, I'll hook my line up, and easy peasy. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do it with this. I think this drill's too big to do this the way I want to, so I'll be right back. Alright, now we're back in business. This little drill doesn't spin quite as fast as the big one, but you push hard enough, it'll get the job done. Alright, coolant flush, done. Oil pressure gauge, done. Hookup choke, done. Wiper blades are easy. I got the valve cover gaskets, which I'm still gonna do. Driver door pins, we're gonna skip that for next time. It's getting late. I gotta get this thing done today so I have time to get everything else I gotta do done before I leave. And clean it out is gonna get done another day this week because I need to clean all the leaves out of the bed, clean all the leaves off the cowl. You can see the bed's dang near half full. And so I need to pressure wash my trailer off, and I'll probably use the pressure washer to rinse the bed out and stuff like that. So I'll do that when I do the trailer. And the inside needs to be cleaned up. It's kind of a mess. I can do that when I pressure wash it if I have time. But you saw I got the choke done. I got our oil pressure gauge mounted. I didn't put the light or nothing on it. I'm not that concerned. I've been driving it around for 2 years, almost 2 years, without an oil pressure gauge at all. So, but now that that's hooked up and everything else is done, I can fire this thing up. Not for long because I don't want to open the door. But I can fire it up for a minute, make sure the oil pressure gauge works, make sure my choke works, and circulate the oil so I can recheck it. And then the only thing that we're going to have left is the valve cover gaskets. You guys have seen me put valve cover gaskets on this truck probably twice already, so I'm not going to make you watch it again. I'm just going to throw them on, and then we'll finish up for today. So I'm going to turn the key on. Watch and see if my choke closes. Looks like it did. Let's see if this thing starts. Our oil pressure gauge is working. It's climbing. I just killed the truck because I kicked it down too soon. 60 pounds of oil pressure on a cold started idle. Not terrible. I'm happy with that. And my choke seemed to work because I kicked it off the choke and it stayed running and it didn't rev back up, which is what it did before. That's a plus. Gotta check the oil, put the wiper blades on, change valve cover gaskets, and then we can call it done on this project and move on to the next thing. I'll be right back. All right, valve cover gaskets are replaced. New wiper blades are on. I need my flashlight. Got her running, sitting here idling. Choke's definitely working because it's cold. It's running way better than it did before. And I bet that tune-up didn't hurt either because those spark plugs were burnt out. But I'm just walking around checking for leaks. I won't know for sure until I drive it around for a little bit and see. I don't seem to have anything actively leaking on the floor, so that's always a good sign. Not this time fixing it, but before I fixed it one of the other times with a problem I finally figured out, it would just sit there and steady drip oil while I was running. So we're better off. Man, we got a whole bunch of stuff done. Go back to our list real quick. Wiper blades, done. Valve cover gaskets, done. The only thing we didn't get done was door pins. And like I said, I'm gonna clean it out when I clean up the trailer. So, and I want to go over and check all the lights, but I have to fix the lights on the trailer, so I'll do them all at the same time. But this may not be the most interesting video I've ever done, but this is what I'm doing this week, and I bring you guys along for whatever I'm doing. That's probably the most I've worked on my truck in a long time, and I got a lot done to it and made a couple repairs it's needed and made a few upgrades I wanted. So it's nice to have a oil pressure gauge. Finally. Could have done it a long time ago. It took 15 minutes, but never got around to it. I'm always working on other stuff. But thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. I'm gonna go take this thing for a test drive to my house because it's past dinner time and I'm hungry. But stay tuned. I'm gonna film everything I gotta do to the trailer and all that, and the other stuff that I gotta do to load up to take with me. And then I'll be filming the trip too, the new project we're going to pick up, part of the road on the way there if we come across anything interesting, so on and so forth. But if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be able to do this. Y'all have a good one. See you next time.